You don't get to throw her out of my house. Jaden Miles' voice cracked through the grand foyer like a lightning strike. The crystal chandelier trembled above them. Security guards froze mid-step, their hands inches from Josephine Williams' arms. Lorraine Chambers stood near the staircase, her posture rigid, though her fingers trembled around the clipboard she clutched to her chest. Welcome back to Whisper Realm, where you experience amazing and interesting stories. Let me know in the comments section where you're watching from. Join me to grow the channel. Like, subscribe and share to make it go viral. Now let us continue with the story. Rain slammed against the towering glass windows of the Buckhead mansion, streaking the skyline beyond into a blur of gray. Josephine couldn't move. She stood on the cold marble floor in her navy cleaning uniform, rubber gloves still on, clutching a small velvet ring box against her chest like it was something fragile. Like it was something alive. You fired her for stealing, Lorraine said, her voice sharp but unsteady. A murmur rippled through the gathered staff. Jaden turned slowly. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker than the storm outside. Stealing, he repeated. Josephine's throat burned. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. All she had done was lift something out of a trash bag. All she had done was hesitate when something didn't feel right. Jaden stepped forward, his voice dropping lower, quieter, but somehow more dangerous. She was protecting something you tried to bury. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Lorraine's lips parted, but no sound came out. One of the guards slowly lowered his hand. Rain pounded harder, as if applauding the accusation. Josephine looked down at the velvet box in her shaking hands. She hadn't opened it since she picked it up. She didn't need to. She knew what was inside. She had dusted it for 3 years. She knew where it belonged. Her heart hammered so violently she thought everyone must hear it. She hadn't meant to interfere. She hadn't meant to step outside her place. She had just refused to throw it away. And somehow that had led her here, standing in the center of a mansion she cleaned but never belonged to, accused of theft, defended by a billionaire whose expression she couldn't read. How did trying to do the right thing bring me here? The question echoed louder than the thunder. And then, 3 weeks earlier, at 4:52 a.m., Josephine Williams was already awake. The Decatur apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft rise and fall of her 12-year-old son's breathing from the next room. Malik slept curled beneath a Braves blanket, one arm flung across his pillow, still young enough to dream without calculating bills. Josephine moved carefully so the floorboards wouldn't creak. Coffee poured into a dented thermos. Uniform pressed the night before. Bus card tucked into her wallet. She paused at the door and whispered the same prayer she had every morning since the accident on I-75 took her husband 2 years ago. Let me keep this job. By 5:30, she was on MARTA, surrounded by nurses, janitors, and construction workers, people who kept Atlanta standing before the skyline even woke up. An hour later, she would step through the gates of Jaden Miles' Buckhead estate. Jaden Miles, 42. Founder of Miles Tech Solutions, the cybersecurity giant headquartered in Midtown. The kind of billionaire whose interviews played on airport televisions. His mansion rose in walls of glass overlooking the Chattahoochee River, sunlight pouring through ceilings higher than Josephine's entire apartment. But Josephine didn't see the river. She saw smudges on windows. Dust along piano keys. A cracked corner on a silver photo frame no one else noticed. She fixed the frame quietly that morning, aligning the backing and tightening the hinge with a tiny screwdriver from her kit. No one would ever know it had been broken. Some people move through the world unseen, holding it together quietly. If you've ever been that person, the one who does right even when no one claps, stay with this story. Stories like this deserve to be witnessed. Lorraine Chambers certainly wouldn't clap. 18 years managing the Miles household had sharpened her into something precise and unbending. She believed in rank. In order. In knowing exactly where you stood. And Josephine stood at the bottom. There was one rule Josephine never broke. Never touch what isn't trash. The argument started just after noon. Voices carried easily through walls made of glass. "I'm not doing this again, Claire. You don't get to decide what matters, Jaden." Josephine kept her head lowered as she polished the hallway console table, but every word echoed down the corridor. The name of their late mother surfaced more than once, sharp, fragile, unfinished. Grief had a way of aging people mid-sentence. A door slammed. Silence followed. By the time Josephine wheeled her cart into the upstairs study, the house had gone still. The kind of stillness that lingers after something important breaks. She moved methodically. Empty the bins. Dust the shelves. Straighten the leather chair. She tied off the trash liner and lifted it from the can. That's when she saw it. A small velvet box, crushed slightly beneath wadded paper and a shattered picture frame. Her breath caught. She knew that box. She had dusted it every Thursday for 3 years. It usually sat on the corner shelf beside a photo of Jaden and Claire as children. Their mother stood between them in the picture, smiling like the world hadn't yet taken anything from her. Josephine stared at it. Not my business. The rule echoed in her mind. But the lid had slipped open. Inside, the diamond caught a blade of afternoon sunlight and scattered it across the dark wood floor like fractured stars. It didn't look discarded. It looked abandoned. Her gloved hands hesitated, then moved. She gently lifted the box from the trash bag, wiped away a smear of dust with the edge of her cloth, and closed it carefully. She placed it on the desk where it couldn't be mistaken for garbage. Footsteps sounded behind her. Cold. Precise. Put that down. Lorraine stepped fully into the study, her heels sharp against the hardwood. I said put that down. Josephine obeyed immediately, hands lifting away from the velvet box as if it had burned her. Ma'am, I thought it was thrown away by mistake. That is not your concern, Lorraine replied, voice clipped and cold. You removed personal property from the trash without authorization. I was only trying to. Trying. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. You handled a valuable family heirloom. Within minutes, the hallway filled with movement. A call had been made. Security arrived, 2 men in dark suits who didn't ask questions. They simply positioned themselves nearby. Josephine stood in the grand foyer soon after, her cleaning cart beside her like evidence in a trial she didn't understand. Jaden entered from the front doors, rain clinging to his coat, jaw tight from a day that clearly hadn't gone well. He looked exhausted. And angry. Lorraine spoke first. We have a situation. She was caught removing your mother's ring from the trash. Josephine's heart pounded. Sir, it didn't belong in there. I thought. You thought. Lorraine cut in. Jaden rubbed his temple. For a moment, he didn't even look at Josephine. Grief and frustration flickered across his face, raw and unresolved. Is it true? He asked flatly. I picked it up, Josephine said softly. But I wasn't stealing. Lorraine's voice was firm. Intent doesn't change the action. 3 minutes. That was all it took. Terminate her contract, Jaden said, the words distant, automatic. Effective immediately. The sentence fell like a door slamming shut. Josephine nodded once. She didn't argue. Didn't plead. She removed her gloves, placed them on the cart, and walked out of the Buckhead mansion as rain soaked through her thin jacket. That night in Decatur, Malik looked up from the kitchen table when she told him. I lost the house contract, she said carefully. He straightened his shoulders, trying to be older than 12. We'll figure it out, Mom. She smiled for him. But later, alone in the dark, she stared at the ceiling and wondered. If she had walked past the ring. If she had done nothing. Would she still have a job? Claire returned 2 days later. She walked into the Buckhead mansion without calling ahead, sunglasses still on, tension riding her shoulders. "Where's Mom's ring?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Lorraine hesitated only a second. "There was an incident." Jayden looked up from the kitchen island. "What do you mean, where is it?" Claire's expression shifted. "You didn't actually throw it away, did you?" Silence moved through the room like a slow storm. Lorraine cleared her throat. "The cleaning lady removed it from the trash. Without permission." Claire blinked. "She tried to save it." "Yes," Lorraine admitted stiffly. "She interfered. And you fired her." Claire's voice cracked, not with anger this time, but disbelief. Jayden felt something tighten in his chest. Later that night, long after the house had gone still, he sat alone in his office and pulled up the security footage. The black and white recording flickered to life. He watched Josephine enter the study. Watched her tie the trash bag. Pause. He leaned closer. She noticed the velvet box. Her hand hovered over it, then pulled back. Even on silent footage, her hesitation was visible. Careful. Respectful. She glanced toward the door. Then she lifted it gently from the trash, wiped it clean with the edge of her cloth, and placed it carefully on the desk. No rush. No greed. No secrecy. Jayden rewound further. There, earlier that afternoon. Claire, eyes red from arguing, stood in the same room. She grabbed the ring from the shelf and, in one sharp motion, tossed it into the trash before storming out. Jayden leaned back slowly. Josephine hadn't stolen anything. She had protected something he'd been too hurt, and too proud, to protect himself. It's easy to judge someone when you hold power. It's harder to admit you were wrong. If you believe integrity matters more than status, let this story travel. Because too many people lose everything for doing what's right. The office felt smaller now. Jayden stared at the paused image of Josephine standing quietly in the study. "I fired the only honest person in that house," he whispered. The black SUV looked out of place in the Decatur apartment complex. It idled beside a row of faded sedans and dented pickup trucks, its polished surface reflecting cracked pavement and rusted railings. Curtains shifted in neighboring windows. People noticed when something that expensive stopped on their block. Josephine noticed too. She had just finished helping Malik with his math homework when the knock came. 3 sharp raps. Her stomach tightened. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Jayden Miles stood on the narrow landing, no suit jacket this time. Just a pressed shirt, sleeves rolled up slightly, as if he wasn't sure how formal he was supposed to be here. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he held out the velvet ring box. "She saved this," he said quietly. "I didn't." Josephine's fingers curled against the doorframe. "Sir, I never meant to overstep. I'm sorry if I—" "No," he cut in gently. "I am." The word seemed to surprise even him. "I reviewed the footage," he continued. "You hesitated. You were careful. You weren't stealing." She lowered her eyes. Apologies had always been safer than arguments. "I should have investigated before making a decision," he said. "I was wrong." The air between them felt fragile. "I'd like to offer you your job back," he added. Relief flickered across her face, but faded when he continued. "Not as a cleaning contractor." She blinked. "I want you to oversee household operations. Director of estate management." Josephine almost laughed, certain she'd misheard him. "Sir. I clean floors." Jayden shook his head slightly. "You protect what matters. That's harder to teach." Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a job. It was a door she had never imagined walking through. Malik peeked from behind her, curious. Josephine looked back at Jayden, uncertainty written across her face. "I'll need time," she said softly. And for the first time, Jayden nodded like the decision wasn't entirely his to make. The staff had never been called into the foyer like this before. Housekeepers, groundskeepers, kitchen staff, security. They stood in a careful semicircle beneath the chandelier that once trembled over accusation. Lorraine stood at the front, posture straight as ever, though her hands were clasped tighter than usual. 18 years of order had taught her that structure was survival. Rules kept chaos out. Jayden stepped forward. Josephine stood a few feet behind him, heart steady but loud in her ears. "I made a mistake," Jayden began. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Billionaires didn't usually start sentences that way. "I acted without reviewing the facts. I allowed emotion to override judgment. And I terminated someone who showed more integrity than anyone else in this house that day." Silence deepened. Jayden turned slightly. "Effective immediately, Josephine William will serve as Director of Estate Operations." Gasps broke across the foyer. Lorraine's jaw tightened, not in rage, but in something closer to reckoning. She had enforced the rules as she understood them. She believed lines kept dignity intact. Now those lines had shifted. Jayden continued. "There's more. In honor of my mother, Miles Tech Solutions will be launching the Miles Legacy Scholarship, supporting single parents across Georgia pursuing trade or technical education." He paused. "Josephine will help design and oversee the initiative." All eyes turned to her. The woman who once pushed a cleaning cart now stood beside the man who owned the house. Hierarchy had not crumbled. It had been rearranged. Integrity, it seemed, had climbed the stairs no one expected it to reach. Josephine looked around the foyer, the same marble floor where she had once stood accused, small and silent. Now she stood in the same place. But she was no longer invisible. 6 months had softened the edges of the Buckhead mansion. Josephine moved through the halls with quiet confidence, her steps no longer tentative. Staff greeted her with nods and smiles, small gestures of acknowledgement that had been absent before. The cleaning cart had been replaced by a tablet and schedule binder, her eyes now scanned more than just dust and fingerprints. Malik visited occasionally, eyes wide as he explored the home theater or peered out at the river view. "Mom," he said one afternoon, "I want to work in cybersecurity someday, like Mr. Miles." Josephine smiled, proud yet aware of the fragility of hope, knowing her own journey had shown him that courage could change everything. The Miles Legacy Scholarship had already funded its first class of recipients. Josephine reviewed applications from single parents across Georgia, seeing stories of resilience and quiet determination that reminded her of herself. Every acceptance letter was a ripple, every success a small echo of the one act of courage that had begun it all. Claire and Jayden's relationship had mended. The ring that had sparked the firestorm now rested in a glass case in the study, not as a trophy of wealth, but a symbol of humility, of lessons learned, and of trust regained. Jayden had changed too. He no longer assumed authority was truth. Meetings felt different now, he listened, asked questions, and allowed himself to be challenged by those he once overlooked. And Josephine, she had discovered a truth she had buried for years, her voice mattered. Not just in cleaning or scheduling, but in decision-making, in shaping a legacy, in influencing lives. The mansion no longer felt like a cage of invisibility, it was a platform, a proving ground, a home she had helped redefine. Across town, journalists and cameras arrived for the press conference announcing the scholarship's first major cohort. Josephine stood near the front, hands folded, steady. Her pulse hummed, not with fear, but with anticipation. Today, the story she had lived in silence was about to be told. And for the first time, she would be seen by the world. The Atlanta press conference buzzed with cameras and murmurs. Reporters jostled for position, microphones angled, flashes flickering like staccato lightning. Jayden Miles stepped to the podium, polished and composed, yet his gaze softened when it fell on Josephine standing near the front. Hands folded, shoulders straight, eyes steady. She was small in stature but monumental in presence. A reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Miles, why make such a radical change? Firing a long-time employee, then rehiring her, not just that, but promoting her and launching a scholarship in her honor?" Jaden inhaled slowly. Because the person with the least power in the room was the bravest. The one no one noticed was the one who refused to look away. She protected what mattered when everyone else turned their heads. Josephine's mind flashed back, the ring discarded, the choice to step in, the trembling hands of Lorraine, the storm outside the mansion windows. She almost ignored it. She almost chose safety over conscience. She exhaled quietly, a shiver of gratitude and disbelief running down her spine. The applause behind her was faint compared to the echo in her chest. Integrity had won. Somewhere tonight, someone will see something wrong and decide whether to step in or stay silent. If stories about courage matter to you, carry this one forward. Not for fame. Not for applause. But because quiet bravery deserves a place in this world. The press conference ended. Reporters filed out. The sun dipped low over Buckhead, painting the glass towers and mansion spires in gold and amber. Josephine took Malik's hand. He squeezed it tightly, as if anchoring both of them to the moment. She looked at the city sprawling beyond, her reflection mingling with the lights, the river, and the lessons learned. One act of kindness had cost her everything. And it had given her a life she never imagined. Thank you for staying to the very end. Trust the story resonate with you. Subscribe to get notified for more stories, like and share to make it go viral. Thank you.